Hello, Roman from Avid with another video. Today we will be reviewing the Vivitar 13mm f2.8 lens. We are here at Marsh Creek Lake to get some sample shots. Right now it's just before sunset, but unfortunately it's raining a little bit, but hopefully the clouds will clear up. It seems to be easing up. Okay, so I guess where to start with this lens would be that it is a completely fully manual lens. You have a focusing ring and an aperture ring, and the lens does not make any contact with the camera. There is a chip in there to record exit data, but unfortunately Vivitar used a 50mm lens as chip, so each time you take a picture with this lens, it will actually say in your exit data that it is a 50mm lens. So, some things about this lens. It's very wide. It's a very affordable ultra-wide lens. You can find it for $370 for Nikon, Sony, and Canon. It's very good quality. The photo quality is fantastic. You get a bag and a lens cap that covers the entire front hood. The hood is built in, by the way. You can't take that off, but you won't ever really want to because the front glass element protrudes really far out, and you would risk possibly scratching it. The focusing ring is really nice and smooth. It's very precise, which is great for landscape photography since this is an ultra-wide lens. That's what you're going to be using it for the most part. I wouldn't recommend using it for portraiture because there is some distortion, and unfortunately it is some complicated distortion. You probably won't be able to fix it with Photoshop. You'll have to find a separate program that does it for you. You might see the distortion in some of these sample shots that I'm about to take. You can see that it's a very wide lens, and for the most part, everything seems to be in focus. I don't know if you can see some of the barreling distortion that's going on here, but right now what I'm going to try and take a picture of is the clouds moving by. So I'm going to raise my aperture to 22 and test out this lens at aperture 22. Okay, so we'll compare the two pictures on the computer, the first picture being f2.8 and the second picture being f22. It does get soft around the edges a little bit at f2.8, but it's very manageable. Some other things to note about this lens are the crazy lens flare you get. I don't have a personal example of this lens flare, but I will post a picture right now in the video. This is not taken by me and it's just found on the internet, but you can get some really cool and crazy effects with this lens. A reason you would want this lens is not only because it's very affordable and it's an ultra-wide, and it does, by the way, fit both crop sensor cameras and full frame, so this would be very wide on a full frame sensor. But besides wanting it for the ultra wide reason of 13mm, you could also want it for its aperture of 2.8, which is great for low light photography, especially if you're into star photography. We did a video very recently about Cherry Springs. I was actually using this lens for the footage there. We decided to make this review separate from the Cherry Springs video. It wasn't originally intended to be, but I figured I should go a little bit more in depth. Some other things to note about this lens: it's not actually a 13mm, it's a 13.8mm, but Vivitar decided that they would like to round down instead of up. So don't expect this lens to be wider than a 14mm Rokinon or Samyang or even the Canon 14mm if you've been looking into that. Okay, so some problems I have with this lens are the way you attach it to your camera. You see this focusing ring here is very large and it takes up the majority of the lens. Then right here you have the aperture ring. So when you try and go and hold the lens, a lot of the time all you're really doing is either spinning the focusing ring or the aperture ring. This can be solved by grabbing the front hood, but I don't like to do that because it's not actually metal, it is plastic, so it does bend a little, so it doesn't feel very healthy for the lens to be doing that. That's just some minor problem I have with the lens. Some final things to note about this lens is that it's actually quite heavy. It has a lot of glass in this tiny little body, so it sort of weighs the camera forward a little bit, especially if you have a very light camera like the 60D or anything below that in the Canon line range. This is the front hood. As you can see, it just sort of clips onto the front. I keep saying front hood. It's actually a front lens cap, but it attaches to the front hood of the lens, and it snaps on. So overall, I would recommend this lens simply because it is very affordable. The fact that it's a manual focus lens doesn't bother me because it's usually meant for landscape, so focusing isn't too much of a problem. Even though it's aperture f2.8, don't expect the shallow depth of field simply because this lens is very wide, so you won't get that as much as, let's say, the Rokinon 85mm review that we did earlier. But overall, I would definitely recommend this lens to anyone who's interested in either really wide landscape photography or nighttime star photography.
She's so grumpy, Gills. You're so grumpy, Gills. Can't she hold it? No. No, she can't. She's too happy of a person. Oh, the camera wins.